Let's talk about Mr. X to the Z, alright? You should already know this record. Classic joint. When this came out, actually, I feel like this came out in 96. I heard it in 98, I think. And I remember hearing it, the audio, real audio, remember? And the beat, crazy. I heard this back in 98, and yeah, I remember just being like, what is this? Who is this? Crazy. And then I saw the video, and it was like just this random guy. You know, at the time, I was like, oh, some random guy named Xzibit. I didn't know a ton about it, but I loved that song. I thought that song was fire. Paparazzi, classic. A guy that people don't really talk about, Xzibit, who honestly was in the game, man. He did some stuff. He had some pretty good songs, man. He had some crazy songs. And in fact, I think when we talk about West Coast rappers and just rappers in general, this is what I try to say when I clown the people that are putting Kendrick and J. Cole and these guys on a pedestal, because I'm just like, I've heard too much rap, man. I grew up on great rap. There's just too much rap for me to put mediocrity on a pedestal. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we should be honest about what it is we're saying is dope or not, right? Like, why lie? So when you guys tell me that Kendrick Lamar is like a top 5 rapper of all time, right? Top 10 all time. Just like, what? Like, is he even top 20? Or I should say not even top 20. Is he even top 2,000 in the West Coast? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to me, man. Just the way that people ride hype. Anyway, Xzibit. My man, he had Foundation and Paparazzi on this album. I'm going to say that one thing that's interesting is that, to be honest with you, I haven't heard these guys' albums. The guys I'm about to talk about in this video, I never heard their full albums until yesterday. That's how much music was coming out. I would always hear the singles because, again, in hip-hop, if you went outside and you hung around hip-hop people, the guys that really were making noise and making great music, their music was always played. Now, if you didn't hear much from the album, that meant that the album probably wasn't that great. And when I look back on some of these albums, like for example, Xzibit's like first 3 albums, some of them I heard before. Like, I think I even had Restless on CD back in the day. But what I'm trying to say is that there's a reason why people don't talk about those albums. They had some phenomenal songs. They had 1 or 2 phenomenal songs. And of course, like I've said, phenomenal music is what at least gets you talked about. Because if you can't even make 1 phenomenal song, how are you great? But the greats, the super goats, the guys that we put on a pedestal, they were able to deliver all that brilliance that maybe Xzibit captured on 1 or 2 songs. Nas captured on an entire album. Ghostface captured on an entire album. That's why we talk about those guys on a certain level. It doesn't mean that there are people that weren't dope or that there was no one else worth talking about in this era. That's not true. There are lots of people that made 1 amazing song, 1 or 2 amazing songs, but that's kind of where it ended for them. And Xzibit, in a way, is in that list. I think he has more than 2 great songs, obviously. Let's talk about them. So, At the Speed of Life, as I was listening to it, it was cool, very sort of freestyle-y as of that time. Like, there was just, them kicking rhymes, Alcoholics type style rap. It was cool, but I think obviously the standouts on this song, or on this album, I should say, are Paparazzi and Foundation, which you probably have already heard. I mean, I heard them songs when they were out, and those were the only songs I ever heard from the dude. I didn't even know at the time that he had the album. Like I said, I was living in the Middle East, so it wasn't like stuff was necessarily coming to me, but I was trying to grab my hands on anything I could find. So I would say that on that album, the other good song on there is Bird's Eye View, which Diamond D did the beat, and that's a pretty decent song. And Hurricane G is live and in color. I love Hurricane G. I've always liked her. Sexy girl, can rap, all that. So she actually makes an appearance here, which I think is pretty interesting. So there is an East Coast NYC flavor in a way with Xzibit. And again, if you're really rapping for real, man, like, if you're a hip-hop fan, you have to come back to NYC. You gotta respect NYC. That's why when I see people that diss NYC, but they claim to be hip-hop, it's like, what are we talking about right now? Anyway, At the Speed of Life, I'd say it's probably his best album overall. And I think that the albums after that sort of get subsequently weaker. Now, the 40 Days and 40 Nights was pretty skippable, all things considered, with the exception of one phenomenal fucking song. Actually, there's two of them that are really good on there. There's the one with Method Man, I think it's called Pussy Pop. That's hot. But the one that's really, really stupid fire is What You See Is What You Get, which, again, I remember when that joint came out and I saw the video for it and it was like, what the hell? Crazy. I mean, that's a precursor really to that Joel's Santana's Town. I remember when Santana's Town came out and I was like, oh, they did the Xzibit video from back in the day. So yeah, What You See Is What You Get, stupid classic, amazing record. And you know, so after that, again, it just was kind of like, it started to get into redundant territory with Xzibit, in my opinion. You know, of course, Multiply is still ill, still classic, still love that record. Symphony in X Major is okay. Here's a joint with DNA. I think all DNA with Snoop, that's okay. And you know, after that, it's just kind of dwindles, you know. And I found that Xzibit, from someone who was listening to Xzibit in real time, I felt like Xzibit started leaning a little too heavy on this, like, I'm West Coast, I'm LA. You know, there's a way he kind of switched up his rhyme style to kind of fit into what people were doing at the West Coast. You know, Dr. Dre was running shit from the West Coast. So it became this sort of like, you know, I got rags on, you know, sort of, there's a certain style that Xzibit, I think, kind of leaned into a little too heavy, in my opinion, which it wasn't as sort of dexterous as his previous efforts. But it wasn't necessarily horrible either, you know? And then after that, it was just kind of a wash. I mean, there was a lot of songs that he come out with that I was just kind of like meh on, with the exception of the beat that's playing in the background, What a Mess, which is classic. One of the best songs he ever recorded, in my opinion, because Primo gave him a scorcher on that. And you know, when he's like, I was blessed with some clarity, yeah, that's what that beat sounds like, man. Sounds like clarity, you know what I'm saying? Fucking classic. Absolutely love that record. And was one of the, you know, sort of last shining sun moments, I would say, with Xzibit, when I think, in my opinion, when it came to his hip-hop career. But overall, I mean, I respect Xzibit. I think Xzibit's a great rapper, someone that people don't really talk about, but obviously he had a lot of great songs, man. Bitch Please, which he was on, like, he was great. He was really great. The only problem, I think some of his stuff was a little bit kind of misogynistic, even to I would say, even for that time. I mean, Snoop obviously in Xzibit. There was a vibe that they kind of had where it was like, yo, you guys are going a little too hard on these hoes out here. You know, listen, you're going a little too hard, man. You know what I mean? But overall, I love Xzibit stuff, like the great stuff, obviously. And he's someone that should get his flowers, to be honest with you. So that's Xzibit. So if you want to, you know, tell me more about Xzibit, any of your favorite songs that I didn't mention, feel free to bring them up. And let's talk about my man, King Tee, a.k.a., you know, the flyest one, I guess, in LA. But someone that I have to be honest with you, I didn't really hear about in the day. I love this beat. Hey. I never really heard about this dude. Honestly, I had no idea he existed. But what's interesting is that he came up before Xzibit and arguably put Xzibit on. Or was one of the people that helped, you know, put Xzibit on. And I heard about King Tee at a barbershop in the most random situation about a decade ago. And it was a younger cat. This is what I'm saying again, that it doesn't matter what age you are. If you are into hip-hop, you're exploring hip-hop, you find something dope, you know your shit. A younger cat put me on to King Tee. He was like, yo, you ever heard the song by a dude named King Tee? And I was like, King Tee doesn't sound familiar. I might have heard the name, but I don't know a single song of his. And he played Dippin', the remix. And I was like, yo, this song go. Like, this is classic. Like, I'm surprised I've never even heard this before. So anyways, that's kind of when I started listening to King Tee, and I checked out a couple of his songs. I don't know as much about King Tee as I would like. In fact, this For Life album, IV Life, I just heard yesterday, so for the first time in full. I think I tried to give an earlier King Tee, like he had some songs, bass and things like that I tried to like. It wasn't grabbing me, to be honest with you. But what I did like about this album was the obviously Dippin' remix, and this song, Check the Flow, I think is fire. There's a 3 Strike song on there that's pretty decent too. So it's all pretty good, you know. I would say like the album itself is a decent listen. What I think is so fascinating is that honestly, man, when I listen to this album and even like the Xzibit one, but especially this one that came out after Illmatic, what's wild to me is that it doesn't sound like as up to date as Illmatic does, which is what I'm telling you guys about producers. Illmatic changed the game. Illmatic is not just a tour de force of rhymes. It is a beat masterclass. It's a producing masterclass. And that's the thing about great beats. Great beats make shit like so memorable that it doesn't even feel dated. You know what I'm saying? Like there's stuff like this album came out after Illmatic and sounds more dated than Illmatic. That's crazy when you think about it. You know what I'm saying? And that's the importance of having a great producer. Producers do stuff like that for you. And obviously even rhyme style, Nas was just ahead of the curve really. So yeah. But ultimately, both of these guys, both of them West Coast legends, both of them have dropped some great music. They both deserve their flowers. Last thing I'm going to say is Xzibit has a song called Fucking You Right, speaking of the misogyny thing, on one of his albums. That is one of the wackest beats I've ever heard in my life. That beat is trash. It's so bad that I probably will always remember how bad that shit is. It literally sounds like what a whack beat would sound like in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. Whatever a whack beat sounds like in your head, that's that beat. I think Xzibit got played by bad production a lot of his career, because when you listen to even on the first album, some of those beats were cool, but they weren't that great, and I think it kind of got worse, where it was just kind of like as a rapper, Xzibit's better than these beats. Like, why not have stuff that really speaks to you? And I think again, like I've said, beats are what makes rappers memorable. Facts. That's why when you hear about certain rappers and you've never heard of these guys, it doesn't mean that they couldn't rhyme or they couldn't kill other people on the mic. It just means that they had bad production, and so they were skipped and ignored at that time. Again, I stress it, the beats. Anyway, thanks for checking this out. Bye.